Okay, just really quickly, I wanted to announce that we did finish taking the poll both on Canvas and also in class, and the top choice that won out was the paper quilling. And then the next three items was the wood burning, wool felting, and sea glass. Those three tied for second place. So we will try to fit all of those into this session. However, if for some reason we end up not finishing, we can always do something for session two as well. Okay, so let's get into our clay, you guys. Just a reminder, if you didn't see the materials for this, make sure you go back to the recordings. The materials were discussed in the very first class. So if you're wondering, you can always get that information from there. Okay, so I'm using my Sculpey clay, and this one's soft. So I have this metal tray over here, and I just was trying it out before class started because, okay, so one of the things is they do really recommend um, a really nice smooth surface to work with. And before I always just use like plastic sheeting or wax paper, and that actually works fine. Wax paper is a great option too. Just something that doesn't stick to the clay. I was going to try this out and it seems to work all right. They also really recommend using like just a ceramic tile. However, the tile has to be glossy. So I didn't have a glossy tile. I only had one that wasn't glossy. And the problem with that is there's texture on it. And so the texture shows up on the in the clay. So the first thing we're gonna do here, you guys, is we're gonna take our clay and, mine came in like a little thing, packaging like this. This one's the firm one, but the one I'm actually using is soft, and the soft one is much more easy to manipulate and move around and, just you want to kind of massage the clay in the very beginning and kind of they call it conditioning it. You're conditioning it and kind of just getting it ready to mold into whatever you want. And what this does is it kind of softens the clay. Now, luckily, when you get soft, it's really nice and easy to do this. So it kind of preps. You spend less time preparing the clay. When you get firm clay, it's much harder to do this. It's a lot harder on your hands. However, the firm clay is great if you're doing sculpting and you're trying to sculpt like little details into the clay. So depending on what you're trying to do, you may want to think about the firmness of the clay. If you end up wanting to do something firm, I would recommend that you get a conditioner and not try to, because you can actually buy a machine that conditions your clay versus trying to do it in your hands, because it really does kill your hands, you guys. There was one class where I did it with just my hands, and oh my gosh, my hands were dying after. It hurt so bad. So if you're interested in learning more about what you need for that, just let me know. Okay, so another easy way to condition your clay too is just to lay it out and roll it. And if you guys don't have this, you can just use like a baking, like a rolling pin, or even just a glass jar would work. And then once you have that, you can roll it on top of itself, and that is a good way of conditioning it as well. If it's hard on your hands, you can just do this, right? I recommend so I used this one as just regular white, you guys, and I like to use this as a base. So I actually use this to make my little cat here. So let's just get like a small little piece, and I'm going to show you how I did that. Usually I'll take a small piece and really you can just kind of guess in the beginning, like based on how big you want the end result. Like this is a little bit bigger than the little cat here I made, you guys. And by the way, I burned this one a little bit. That's why he looks funny. I kind of put him into the oven a little too long, unfortunately. So it baked him too much. So decide how big you want your item. You can go bigger if you want because, when you go really small, you may struggle a little bit. I got this cool flat thing here and I wanted to try it out. So this is kind of nice because you can see through it. Um, and this is a great way to, you can flatten your clay or you can roll it. And when you use your fingers, you guys, it's actually totally fine to use your fingers. The only thing is you might notice, and that's what I noticed here on one of these, is that you can see my fingerprints. So sometimes it's better to make sure you really smooth this out after you're done. But here I've rolled this into a little ball, right? Usually, anytime you're making anything with clay, kind of helps with this to start with a really basic shape. We've got a little ball here, and I'm just going to flatten it a little bit with this. Okay. And then that already helps get me to the point where I almost got the cat head. All I have to do is create the ears, right? So how simple is that? I can just take a little tool, and what I did is I just took the back of a paintbrush, but you could use like a pencil or whatever, anything really. And I used this end to kind of smash down on one side to create those ears. And it is going to kind of smash down the rest of the clay, but that's okay. You just kind of shape around the that little the paintbrush or whatever you're using, and that kind of look, you might have to reshape it a little bit. But the best thing, you guys, I notice is just using your fingers. Like here you can kind of pinch the ears. Let me just make sure. Okay. You can kind of pinch the ears, and even smoothing out the face, you guys. So actually they do say just using your fingers to smooth out the clay does a great job to smooth it. The thing is you have to be careful, like you don't just press your finger into it, because then that's when you get those finger prints into it. Now this is a little bit bigger than my original one. I tried to make it really tiny the first time, but I did struggle a little bit with when I made it really, really small. So think about how you want to do that. Okay, so I've got my head shape already, and I could probably smooth this out a little bit more. But for the eyes, you guys, you really can decide if you just want to paint the eyes and the nose and everything. That might be easier. I did end up using clay. So I wanted to do blue eyes because my cat's eyes are blue. So I was mimicking her. And I think I used this light blue here. Just a reminder, you guys, these are polymer clay. So when they dry, you dry them in the oven. You cure them in the oven. And when they're cured, they are waterproof, which is really nice. Air dry clay is not waterproof. Okay, so make sure you recognize that whenever you use your clay. So for the eyes, what I did is I just took a tiny bit of blue for each eye. And here's the hard part is getting about the same amount, right? Especially when it's this tiny, it's hard to get the same amount. Like here, this little, these, this little set of tools I got came with these cutters, these little cookie cutters. And let's see the smallest one here may work. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. So this tiny little cookie cutter might have worked for this. The only thing is it's difficult to get back out once you get it in there. So you can try to get cookie cutters so you're more consistent with what you're cutting. So here I've got my little circles and I can again I'm just going to round it out. Start with that by rounding it out. And then after I round that out, I just flatten it. I just push down on it to make it flat. And I see, okay, is that too big or too small for my cat eye? And I think that's actually a good size this time, especially for the size of this head. I made it a little bit bigger this time. Let's see if I can get that. Now, if you can just lightly put it on. Oh, it stuck to my finger. There is this toolkit unfortunately didn't come with like a little scraper. Oh, it has this actually, this scraper. Let's see if I can scrape this off my finger. Oh, nope. Messed it up. So let's do that one more time. Sometimes what you have to do is just create the little sphere first and just flatten it on the actual face. So the problem with this is sometimes it doesn't come out exactly the way you want. So like right now, I'm just putting that down, but I haven't flattened it yet. Let's try this one too. Because you kind of want to place them first, so that way, one eye's not higher or lower than the other one. So placing it kind of helps. But at this point, when you flatten it, sometimes one eye is bigger than the other. And I've had to, you can scrape the, clay off after. Just gonna flatten, oh, nope. Doesn't want to stay. I think last time I just used my fingers. So maybe I will just use my fingers again this time. Just make sure that that is about the same. So last time I did have to scrape the eye out because one was way bigger than the other. I mean, this one is a tiny bit bigger than this one right now, but it's not like super noticeable. So it's not a big deal. I think it's okay. I'm too much shadow. My head's making a shadow here. I need It's because of this extra lighting here. Is that better? Not really. I know what the problem is. I see what the problem is. Hold on one second, you guys. I'm going to... All right, sorry about that. Okay, so then at this point, again, if you want to fill the eye with black clay, you can, or this time I'm just going to paint it, you guys. It's going to be way easier to paint it. Last time I did get even smaller, tiny little pieces of clay, and I put them inside there, but it was kind of a struggle. So I think this time I'm just gonna do just regular paint, like some acrylic paint for the eyes inside. And then for the nose and extra color if you want, you can of course use, again, you can use paint, or you can use a different color clay. What I used for this nose, you guys, is I just ended up using mica powders. So I wanted to show you what I mean by that, because so the mica powders do something that's a little bit different than just regular clay. The mica powders have like this shine on them, okay? And so that you can use these mica powders to paint on your clay. The only thing is that when you use these, you need to seal it after, right? Because this is like just a powder, and so eventually you have to seal it. What's really nice about this is you can get like a really soft, subtle paint. So let me show you what I mean. If I just put a little bit out here, over here, just a tiny, tiny bit. I don't know if you guys can see this, just a tiny bit over there. And you want to get like a paintbrush of some sort. Okay, I'm just going to grab this paintbrush over here. And let's just say I want to make the cheeks rosy. Okay, this is what I usually use with the pink mica powders, because you can make the cheeks a little bit rosy by just grabbing a tiny bit of the pink and then just going right onto the cheeks of whatever you're trying to make. So like right here, and then just lightly dust that, and then also let's do the other side. And you can just get some really cute little rosy cheeks. And what's cool about the mica powders, they're also shimmery, which is really nice. Like if you're doing certain things, like especially like last time we were doing, under the sea animals, we did the jellyfish. I felt like it came out really, really nice on the jellyfish. So then, see, I've got the rosy cheeks. You can do the nose, but I would actually recommend now this time. So last time I did the nose with the mica powders, and I also added a little mica powders to the ears. But the problem with this one is I overbaked it. So you really, it's hard to tell. This one I'm not going to overbake. We could add a tiny bit to the ears. I'm going to make the nose different this time, you guys. I mean, I don't even have to put a nose. This is already cute. I don't need to add a nose. But if I were to put a nose, I would just use like maybe a small piece of clay or something. And then this is already done. I can add one of my little O-rings that I got. I mentioned I got this from Daiso, which is really nice. You can order these online too, you guys, but the online one came with like thousands, and I really just didn't need that many. I just needed a couple. Just wanted like you know, maybe 10. And this one, I think, came with like 20 or something like that. This one is actually a little bit small. No, this is the same size. Okay, good. I was trying to find something really small. The last ones I had were silver. These ones are gold. And that's totally fine. See, I have to pick this up. They have something where you can like pick it up with like a little scraper, but let me just set this on here. I'm trying not to make big fingerprints all over this. So I just want to set this in here, and all I have to do is push it in. Okay. And then I've got my, now I just need to make sure, guys, because I touched right there, you can kind of see the fingerprints. Just smooth out at the very end, smooth out any other tiny fingerprints you might have put in there. And this is pretty much ready to bake. Something just really simple. Okay, so I am going to bake that, and just a reminder, make sure you read the directions on the back, you guys, because the each polymer clay has directions, and they're a little different depending on the brand that you buy. I mean, generally it's around the same. Like this one is 275 Fahrenheit, 130 Celsius for 15 minutes per quarter inch. So every 6 millimeter of thickness. So make sure you do measure how thick your object is. Like this was like pretty much a quarter inch. And I meant to take it out. I was trying to leave this one in for longer because this is thicker, obviously. This one came out fine, you guys. This one didn't burn. But I had forgotten to take this one out, and I had left them all in. And so this one got burned. This one, yeah, so this one got burned. This one came out fine. So make sure after whatever time you do take out the ones that you need to take out. This one also got burned a little bit too. This one's a little bit thicker, but it got burned just a little bit on the bottom. Okay, so there's my cat. Let's do the mushroom next. That one's super easy as well. Okay, so I'm just grabbing more of this base clay. So I got a bigger white one because I feel like there's a lot of things that you can, you know, make with the, you know, just white clay. And then I also got these smaller ones. These are all the colored ones, but these are much smaller. So, you know, you can't make anything huge with this, right? These are much smaller. So sometimes it helps to think about, well, what are you going to be making, and just buy the appropriate colors. I bought that whole set, a set of just a bunch of different colors, so I had some to work with. Sometimes just rolling between your fingers or your hands rolls it up really nice too. Yeah, there we go. So I'm starting with the ball again, and then I want to roll back and forth to make it, you know, just more oblong. Is that the right word? And then, I mean, you could even shape it to just be thinner on one side by rolling that one side here. Like I'm rolling this left side a little bit more. I think I made this a little smaller this time. Oh, it's about the same. Okay, so I've got the head, the body already. That was super easy. And then for the top, it's just choose whatever color you want, right? This one I did red. I could change it up this time and do maybe like a pink. Let's do a pink one this time. Now just remember every time these little dots on top, again, I did use clay that time, but really just using paint is going to be a little bit easier. The only problem with paint, you guys, is you need to make sure you're using a paint that it's better to use something that's waterproof. Okay. It's better to use something that's waterproof. And then if you're not going to use something waterproof, then just make sure that you're sealing your final object. And there's the sealants there's what's it called? The sealant that is recommended. They have Sculpey polymer clay sealant, and it's called like a glaze, and it's pretty affordable, and that is recommended. However, you can also use, there's other, sealants you can use. There's a bunch of other sealants you can use. There's spray sealants. I was thinking of using epoxy resin because I have epoxy resin. Epoxy resin is pretty expensive, so if you have it, you can use it, but you don't feel like you have to go out and just get it, okay? Because it's pretty expensive.
I've used clear nail polish.
Yeah, there we go. You can also use some clear nail polish. You might be able, I think Mod Podge is not waterproof. So I don't think you can use that. But there are also sprays that are waterproof. So just if you ever need to see any or get ideas, just let me know. But if you don't want to deal with sealants, you can just use polymer clay throughout, and your entire object will be waterproof if you use clay throughout. And then you don't have to worry about the sealant. So there's those benefits. So you just think about what you prefer, right? There are also paints that are waterproof, you guys. So you can always get the ones that are waterproof. Okay, I've got another little sphere shape here, and I'm just gonna flatten this out again. And I want to flatten it out a little bit more. Want to create a little like hat, which is the top of the mushroom. And you kind of have to squeeze the sides. Ooh, I got a little bit of blue in there. That's the thing, you have to be careful with where you're laying your clay, because if you have some left over, it's good to wipe this down. Sometimes you end up with a little color from the previous one. And what I can do is I can hide that inside anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. It's right there. You can still hide that and make that the inside of the mushroom. I'm just pinching the edges. Let's see if that's big enough. So with sticking this together, you guys, sometimes it doesn't stay very well. If you need to, you can add like something between this piece and the top piece. Now this seemed to stay fine. Doesn't seem like it's coming apart. If you feel like it's a little fragile and you need something extra, you could even break off like a tiny part of a toothpick and just kind of stick it in between you know, and stick those together like that. But I think this is going to stay fine once it cures. Now, I am kind of pushing it together, and so I have to be mindful. I need to, so I accidentally squished this way a little bit when I did that. And so I want to kind of work it back out and make sure I also smooth this back out at the end. And that's the thing when you're using with the softer clay, it's really easy to condition, but it's also easy to accidentally squish your clay. And so you kind of have to, you know, there's positives and negatives depending on the firmness. Just trying to smooth this back out a little bit. It's kind of dark in here and I can barely see. Okay, especially when you have nails, you end up having like little nail marks sometimes. Let me just smooth that out. I did end up trying to make little arms here. The arms didn't come out great. I'm going to show you how I made them and you can decide whether or not you want to do that or not. The arms, all I did was I used these little snippers and I just cut the side, cut out a piece like that, and then I just kind of pushed it to the front, and now you've got like one arm there. That's kind of blurry right now. Let me try to readjust the camera so you guys can see a little bit better. Sometimes when you go further, it becomes a little more clear. Okay, so then I just cut and then just push that towards the front. Then you got little arms. Again, for the eyes, I did use clay here, but I'm probably just gonna paint this time, you guys. I think it's gonna be way easier. For the mouth, I literally just took a sharp, you can take a toothpick or, you know, a sharp tool. I just carved a mouth in there. And of course, you can still use your mica powders if you want to give it a little bit of rosy cheeks. I almost need a smaller brush than this. Did I miss a chat earlier? Let's see. I emailed you a picture of the one I did. My Wi-Fi, so I can't upload it. Okay. Okay, I will check that in just a moment. I think someone emailed me something. Okay, so then we've got this ready to go. And I mean, I could paint the dots too. It's really up to you if you want to add the dots again. Let's just paint the dots. What's really nice is let's try to add some of the mica powder to the top to change the color a little bit. The pink, I don't know if it'll show up. So this is a lighter pink. I generally like to go with something a little bit darker. So let's see this one. Sometimes you have to compare. I almost think like a red might be better. If I can find, this one might be okay. Let me try that one, this one over here. Oops, that's too much. Try to take out just a little bit. A little mica powder goes such a long way. Also, if you're changing colors on the mica powders, make sure you use a different brush. Let's get a little of this and see what it looks like. Last time it didn't really show up on the other mushroom because it was just a little too dark, the clay. And it's not too late to rub out some of these little cracks in there. That one's all right. I wish it was a little more pink. But I had to go with slightly darker versus lighter. I felt like that was going to be better to go dark instead of light. And you have to be careful. You kind of have to clean up your fingers here and there because when you're like I just touched the mica powders and I really should try to clean my hands before I go and touch that again. Okay, so then now that one's ready. I'm going to put one of these O-rings in this one as well. And if this goes all the way through, that will hold the white and the pink part together. Wish I had my glasses. I need to go grab some glasses here. If your arm, like this left arm got a little bit messed up and it doesn't look exactly right, I can just smooth that out and redo it. Okay, so don't feel like when you mess up, you can't just like redo something. You can fix it as long as it hasn't cured. And polymer clay, you guys, stays, I mean, you can recondition it. You can put it away like into a plastic bag like this for a very long time and then take it back out and just condition it and it should work again. You don't need to add water or anything like that. Kind of lost the mouth a little bit there. And you can spend forever trying to get this perfect, but the truth is it's almost more fun when it's not too perfect. Like you can tell that's handmade and there's something nice about that, right? You don't have to have everything so perfect. Okay, let's see. This is a good time to take a break. So let's pause. Just really quickly, there's a really good question here on when to put the O-ring in, you guys. You need to put it in before you bake it because once it's cured, it's going to be very hard. It should be hard like plastic once it's cured. Um, and so it's going to be very hard to get that O-ring in unless you use like a screwdriver or something. And unless you have a tiny, tiny little screwdriver, and I don't really know how well that would work. It's super easy to get it in while the clay is wet, so that's why I really recommend putting it in before you cure it. And when you put it in the oven, if you're using metal, it's totally fine. There should be no problem putting this in because the polymer clay bakes at a lower temperature anyways, so you should be fine with that. So great question. Okay, so we have another great question here. It says, my clay package says use a dedicated oven to bake. Must we? What do you do? Thanks. Yes. The answer is yes. You should use a separate oven. And you can get a small little oven for pretty reasonably priced. The truth is you really, when you're doing these type of things, you guys, you should get a separate oven to bake your clay. And here's why. When you are baking clay, you're releasing probably small little toxins, and you just want to make sure you're not getting that into your food. I mean, I guess if you really don't want to get a separate oven, you want to thoroughly clean out your oven before you bake your food in there. Um, so that's kind of the longer answer, right? Like you could thoroughly clean out your oven and make sure every single time you go between baking your clay versus food, you're just properly cleaning it. Um, but it might be just easier to get that dedicated oven, um, and it'll just be easier because you can get, like just the tiny small little toaster oven. That's what I got. Like just something, they're pretty cheap. So that is what I recommend because some of these clays have more toxins in them. I don't know um, how much it has in there, but it definitely releases a kind of like a small smell, you guys. Like when you're heating your clay, you definitely can kind of smell something. So just be careful with that. Another question, if we use air dry clay, can we coat it with something to keep it water resistant? These are great questions, you guys. Yes, absolutely. I love this question. You can use air dry clay. You can use something to coat it and make it waterproof. To make it waterproof, the best thing to do is to use epoxy resin. Epoxy resin does get really expensive though, you guys. So let me show you the epoxy resin that I use. Do I have it right here? Hold on. But epoxy resin gets really messy, you guys. So you have to be kind of careful with epoxy resin. Um, this is the kind that I use, and it's pretty expensive. You can order this online or get this from an art store. This is art grade resin. So it comes out really clear and it's supposed to be toxic free, but there's definitely a little smell when you use it. And I would still recommend if you're going to use resin at all, if you're going to use this resin, you should still go into a well ventilated room, maybe even go outside and do it. And keep in mind, this is liquid, so you kind of have to brush it on. I think they might sell some kind of spray resin too. I haven't tried that, you guys. So, I haven't tried the spray one. But they also sell, let me see, I've got another thing over here I can show you. Sorry, it was just almost out of my reach. I've used this many times. This is Krylon Triple Thick Crystal Clear Glaze, and I will say that it doesn't say that is waterproof. I looked all over here and I don't see anything about it being waterproof, but I want to say that I sprayed a tile with this and I set it outside to test it, and it's sitting near the sprinkler, so it gets wet all the time and it gets a lot of sun. and the tile still looks the same after many years. So this stuff works really well. This would be another option. Just make sure you read the directions on the back because this is again, when you're making crafts, you guys, these are toxic. You need to go outside. Anytime you spray something, obviously you want to go outside and do it, but be really careful, protect yourself, wear the appropriate gloves, protection and everything to keep yourself safe. And you definitely want to seal your air dry clay because that will crumble over time for sure. I just had something crumble the other day. I was so sad about that. Let's see. Okay, so we've got another sharing here. So hold on one second. Let's pause. Okay, so we're gonna finish up here with our little bird. And this one, you guys, because it's just got the two colors, I did end up using just my pre-colored polymer clay. So these are all pretty simple, but again, I did look up additional things, and I have a lot of images of some other ideas of things I wanted to make. So if you guys are interested, we could do like maybe one more thing next week. I mean, we've got time, you guys. So let's see, what color did I use for this? I think I used a gray, and this one looks a little darker gray. Why do I not have that same color? I might have to use this darker gray. I think I'm out of the gray that I used for the body on that one. Oh, and another thing I could do, because this gray looks a little dark, what I can do is I can always mix. You guys. So I could take some of this, and to lighten it, I could take some of my white, and I can mix these together. And you do have to mix very thoroughly to get your final color. But if you just keep mixing, you will get, and that's something cool too. I didn't get to show you that, is if you mix just a little bit, you get these cool swirls. Like you could make some cool objects with swirls in it just by mixing two colors together, but not over mixing, right? We've got some cool swirls already. Then you can mix even more and you'll get thinner swirls, right? Less swirls. Whoops. But you still get swirls, thinner swirls. And the more you mix, the more you combine. Think about it like as if you're mixing two paints together, right? When you first just do one stroke, you see the streaks of one color in the other. And then the more you brush, the more you mix those two colors, they are combined into one color. So the same thing, you can do that with the clay as well. The more you mix it, the more they become one color. So we're pretty much here with one color now. Okay, we've got this lighter gray now. Still, I think I had a little brown in that other one, but that's okay. We can work with it. I always start with my sphere, and then this one I think I really just literally shaped with my hand, but I could kind of roll it out first too if I wanted to, and just create the tail, right? Because we're trying to make it a little bit longer for the neck, and then just start pinching one end for the tail. And you've got your tail And so this is the bottom half, and now you just want to connect. So we're going to use yellow to make that top half. Get a little yellow here. Try to keep your clays separate. This one I didn't keep separate enough. It must have fell out of the plastic. And so now there's little bits of other colored clay in there, which is, it's not the biggest deal if you've got a tiny bit, but if you've got too much, it's gonna change the color. This one you can do like a smaller piece. Roll that out. And you want to kind of shape this as well. You know, pinch again the top to get the little head there. And you want to pinch that pretty small. Get that kind of sharp at the top there. And almost like push it back a little bit. Now this is the hard part. I think the hard part is getting these two to match. And sometimes you just have to cut a small piece. So when you cut a small piece, you can use a butter knife. I even just grab my my palette knife. A palette knife works fine too. And I just try to cut so it's flat. And you can actually rough up. That's another way to connect two pieces of clay, is to rough up one side or both sides. Like you could take something here and just like, this is just a little brush to like rough up, you know, create a little texture on one side and a little texture on both of the sides that you want to connect. And then you push them together, and you really just kind of have to smooth it out, you guys. Just smooth it out. And the more you kind of smooth it out, the more connected these two pieces get. Because right now you will have a little separation. And let me know if someone has a better tactic on this. Another, you know, I'm thinking another option too is if I hadn't shaped the top and the bottom out, I could have had two long pieces or two short pieces, stuck them together, rolled them over and over again with this until they were connected. And then after that, shape out the top. So that's another way to do it. So this one you do kind of have to spend more time getting rid of all the little fingerprints and I also recommend, what I did is I did round this out, so when it hangs, it's probably going to hang fine, but I didn't think about when it was sitting. So when it's sitting, it just rolls away, right? If you want yours to sit, make sure you flatten the bottom a little bit more so that it sits up. I mean, it's going to be hanging anyway, so it doesn't really need the rounded bottom. But it also may just dry a little bit better if you have it sitting up like this in the oven. So that we're almost there. I think Just but take your time with shaping and smoothing it out. With the eyes and the nose, I think for the nose it's better to use a piece of clay because you want it to actually have, a three-dimensional effect. So just doing like maybe a piece of, I think I did like a dark brown or dark, maybe even black. Let's see, do I have some dark brown left? I thought I had some dark brown. Here we go. There's a tiny bit of dark brown left, and this is very dark. And you want to take a much smaller piece. This is still probably too big. All I did is I rolled it out into a sphere again, and then I just kind of made it into more of an oval, and I used that for the beak. And you can make it even sharper. If you want to make it sharper, you can pinch one end. And that's all I used for the beak. You put it right over here. For the eyes, I also use clay, but again, I think it's fine to just paint it in if you want. I did do the little blush. Just do a little bit there. With the mica powders, you can just lightly seal, like you don't have to, you don't absolutely need epoxy resin. Epoxy resin is nice too if you want to get a very high sheen, like maybe you want it extra glossy and shiny. Epoxy resin will give you that. One more thing, you guys, let's see, how much time do we have left? We've got about 15 minutes left. I really wanted to, I ended up buying this polymer clay, and I really wanted to try it out. I just haven't had the chance to try it out yet. So I'm going to show you that in a second, but we might be out of time to actually make something. It's got to be something pretty quick. And we can also do it next week. Maybe do a little small something. Take your time and really clean up, because later when you do dry this, everything will show. Oh, I did end up using a larger O-ring for this one since it was extra big. So I will go grab that in a moment. I wanted to show you guys that there's also these translucent polymer clays, and let's test this out next week. Let's make something with it, like something small. Basically, it has this translucent feel, right, when it dries. So one time we did make like a jellyfish, you guys, and I was thinking it would have been really nice if I had some translucent polymer clay, and I finally went and bought this. And by the way, you guys, at Michael's, this was only like what, $2.99, or I think it was like $3 for this, okay? Around $3. This is 2 ounces. And if you want it, make sure you get the translucent one. I also bought Fimo because I was going to test both of them and see which one I liked more. But this is way more expensive online. I went to go try to buy it online. It was like $9 or something. And I was like, I got it for only $3 at Michael's. So let's test this out next week. Let's think about what we can make with it. I'm gonna pause the recording here. Okay, so next week, you guys, let's do one last thing with the translucent clay just to test it out. We'll do one thing. We'll start with that, and then we'll go into paper quilling. Okay. Um, but one last thing is I want to remind you that you can bake all your items now, or you can wait. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like bake them immediately. You can wait until next week, make more items, and then bake them all together. That's totally fine. Um, the only thing is you just want to really make sure, measure the sizes of each of your things that you made. So you do use the bake for the appropriate time. And yeah, do really consider getting the separate oven to bake your items. And I think that's pretty much it, you guys. So paper quilling, you guys, because we're going to start on that next week. Let me get this in a separate recording.